Hi, good evening. Welcome to the John Gaunt podcast. Electric cars are killing jobs, not just here in the UK, but right across the globe. The rush to go all electric is ridiculous. It's insane. It will kill jobs, but it will also kill communities. Listen to me. I do know what I'm talking about here. Obviously, the big news today is that Luton is going to stop making the electric car or the electric van at their plant. 1,200 jobs are going to go in Luton. If you don't know Luton, it's a town in central Bedfordshire. It holds a special part in my heart. Let me tell you why. Because I think it was, well, I know it was the closure of the Luton car plant before, back in 2000, 2001, that effectively made my career. Because you know what the fundamental truth is in radio, in telly? Bad news is good news for us whores who work in the news industry. Let me explain. When you have bad news is when you're at your best, is when you're at your mettle, which is when you can talk about issues that matter. I went to Luton about 5 years previously to it being closed down. I didn't particularly want to go. I was working in Coventry and Birmingham, and things were tickety-boo. And then they decided, the BBC, yeah, a boo sucks. They wanted to merge, and it's similar to the motor industry, this. They wanted to merge Coventry with Birmingham. Some prat in an Armani suit, an ill-fitting Armani suit in London, had looked at a map and thought, oh, Birmingham, it's only 20 miles away from Coventry. We don't need two local radio stations. They can have one. So they wanted to merge our station, which was becoming successful at last, with Birmingham. Now, if you're from Birmingham or Coventry, you'll know there's a massive difference, just like there's a massive difference between Birmingham and Wolverhampton. They're different, almost different countries. It's hard to explain, but they're different. But this prat sitting in London thought, oh no, they're all the same. So he merged them. And as a result of merging them, the audience went like this. Several years later, millions of pounds later, the BBC, which of course you fund, reversed their decision, spent £3 million to build a new studio complex and brought BBC Coventry back, but gave it a name change, as if that would convince people. Ludicrous. But as a result of this closure, they moved me to Luton. Now, I didn't want to go to Luton because I had all the negative connotations and impressions of it. Remember Lorraine Chase? Were you truly drafted here from Paradise? Nah, Luton Airport. That's what I thought about Luton. I thought it was a shithole. We used to go there and play football. I remember when it had a plastic pitch and that David Evans was the chairman. I hated the place. It was horrible. It was a dump, he says, coming from Coventry. However, we've got the Blitz to explain, are they? However, when I went to Luton, it was the making of me as both a radio presenter and as a columnist in newspapers, because I got a job working for the local Luton News. 25 quid a column it was. There's a lot of money in those days, let me tell you. But I went there and I suddenly realised Luton was just like my hometown of Coventry. It had the same ethnic mix. It had the same one big industry, the motor industry, and the people were the same. Gritty, down to earth, piss takers, have a laugh, like a nice drink on a Friday. The ethnic makeup was more or less identical. The biggest ethnic minority was the Irish, just like in Coventry. But there were Sikhs and Hindus and Muslims. And obviously we had, the Muslims in Bury Park. There were problems later on. However, it was quite a good mixed community, I've got to tell you that. And I just loved it. I had a team of young people working with me, answering the phones. I've mentioned them before. Some of them went on to be like superstars of radio and broadcasting. Some of them are still in Luton. They've dedicated their lives to that local radio station. We took that radio station from like no listeners, effectively, to 19.8% of the share. And it was massive. And I think it was just because we were down to earth. The lessons I'd learnt in Coventry, I just applied them in Luton. I didn't move to Luton. That was my snobbery. I moved to a place called Stony Stratford on the outskirts of Milton Keynes. But we covered it there as well. So I used to, at first, for a year, I used to commute from Coventry down there in this battered old car. I wasn't a Jag. I was down in a Jag. And then I moved down to Milton Keynes, Stony Stratford. Nice place. Anyway, So then I was there for 4 or 5 years and I adored it. Had this young team around me, as I say, and on a Friday we'd all go out on the piss, and then I'd stay over Friday night because then I did a regional show all day Saturday or Saturday morning. And the people I worked with were brilliant. People like Toby, Lorraine, Louisa Compton, great people who really worked at what we were doing. So anyway, there I was for 4 or 5 years, and then I'm doing well, earning a good living. And then suddenly out of the blue, Vauxhall, or General Motors, should I say, they decided to close down Luton. Now, I was quite close to Vauxhall Motors. They gave me a car. In fact, I used to joke every time the ashtray got full, even though I never smoked, they gave me a new one. It was a Frontera. Stop sniggering at the back. I found them to be a great car. But every 6 months, I got a new one. And then the local rag decided to expose me as if I'd done something wrong, as if I'd taken a freebie and I was in their pocket. I wasn't. But it was great. There was a knock on the door. I opened the door and the flash, I'd learned a big lesson here. Let me tell you, when I went into tabloid journalism later, the flash went off and there's a big fat bloke, what I could see again, because your eyes go, don't they? And he had like a camera and it was on his beer belly and he just took photos. So I said, hey, what you doing? So, of course, that's the picture they put on the front page of the Milton Keynes bullshit or whatever it's called, right? And Gaunt denies having car. I didn't deny anything because I said, yeah, I haven't done anything wrong. I hadn't broken any rules. Anyway, so that was my first introduction to Vauxhall. But then, as I say, months or a couple of years later, I used to go to the cricket with them. Used to go to football. Used to even go to Luton town with them. And I even got quite, affectionate feelings for Luton, Kenilworth Road. What a proper football stadium made of all wood, just in a terrace, like loads of houses. And then there's this bloody football ground. You used to go over these steps, over the back to get into the ground, over their gardens. I always remember I went to the Eric Morecambe suite because he was their most famous ever fan, of course. Luton Town, remember? And and the Eric Morecambe suite, it was a container, like a shipping container with a few armchairs in it. And then I went to the Nick Owen suite, who became a good friend of mine, actually. He used to present to a mid-morning on, not mid-morning, what's it called? It used to be called that on BBC. But it's on Midlands Today now. Great man, lovely man, great, nice fella. Used to be on with Anne Diamond years and years ago. Anyway, he's there, I think he was the chairman for a while, or president. But yeah, so there's the Nick Owen suite, another shipping fucking container. But anyway, good luck. But they're a proper club in a proper town. I even had a little bit of affection for the Arndale Centre. And that was rough. Let me tell you, even the Rottweilers went round in pairs. It was a rough, tough town. The Guinness was fantastic. The best Guinness I've ever tasted, apart from when you go to Dublin or you go to Ireland, right? Let me just tell you that. But brilliant place. Loved it. So then out of the blue, Vauxhall, I didn't tell you, we were building the audience up. I was doing the breakfast show. We built the audience up massive. Loads of people used to tune in, right? And we used to do competitions and fun, and it was news, and we'd duff up politicians. It was all this. If you've ever heard me on the radio, you know what I do. And it's no different. It was just in Luton. Anyway, so what happened was, this is the best bit, right? So they're going to close down Vauxhall. So we heard this on the Friday morning. So the boss says, can you do a show tonight as well? I said, yeah, no problem. So we did a phone in, and the phones went mad. Because these people had been listening to me for so long. And not only had they been listening for so long, some of them didn't listen. But if they worked at the factory, their mums, their dads, their wives, their parents, whatever, did listen. And it told me a great lesson about local radio, proper BBC local radio, which, by the way, I think is the only part of the BBC that should be funded by a licence fee. Local should mean local. So if you come from Coventry and you go to Birmingham, you shouldn't be able to understand it. Well, usually can't anyway. Can't you? Oh, talking like it. Oh, good. But what I'm trying to say is the subject matter should be so local. So because we'd been on every day for so long, people knew me. So when the shit hit the fan and they thought they could just dispose of thousands of loyal workers, who did they phone? Who are you going to phone? Not Ghostbusters, Gaunty. So that Friday night, the phones went mad. Loads of people at the factory, loads of people around. And you've probably seen news reports today where people are saying, well, everybody in Luton knows somebody who works there. I'm not sure if that's still the case completely, But back in 2000, 2001, it definitely was. It was a car town like Coventry. Everybody knew someone at the Vauxhall, right? So the phones went mad. We had this great conversation. And then we decided, right, Monday, we'll do an outside broadcast. I think it was the following Monday. My memory is playing up a bit. We did an outside broadcast outside the factory gates. We had, like, in those days, the BBC had these radio vans. So I'm in this radio van. Was it Friday? Yeah, so I can't even remember what day of the week it was. We did this show, but the night before, we'd all been out for a curry. And I had this little guy called Lee Agnew. He looks like, do you remember Rat Boy? When there was always these stories about kids running riots on estates, feral kids, right? They used to call him Rat Boy, yeah? Well, Lee is the archetypal Rat Boy, right? Comes from Luton, never left Luton, don't think he ever wants to leave Luton. He's an absolute superstar radio producer, though. So he's in the van with me producing Rat Boy. Back at base is Lorraine, who went on to become a very successful producer in the BBC as well. But she's an Irish girl, and she was from Luton, although she'd been to university and studied cultural studies or something. Cultural studies. Anyway, we took the mickey out of her about that. Anyway, that day, we'd all been on the booze the night before. We all had raging hangovers. I'm in the van. She's back there, Lorraine, proper Irish girl. She's vomiting into a waste paper bin as she does the knobs and produces the show from the studio. Now you're thinking, where's this story going? All I'll tell you, I'm in the van with Lee, right, with the old curry. He's trying to open the windows. He's bringing guests in to talk to me in the radio van, and we've got Lorraine putting them on the phone. We did a fantastic show. Absolutely incredible, because the community, and this is what I'm talking about, and this is what I'm saying about electric cars killing the community. It's all going too fast. It's going to wreck our society. Don't get me wrong, I'm quite in favour of electric cars, but the idea of doing it by 2030 is ridiculous. It's just not going to happen. Who's allowing Ed Miliband to get away with this bollocks, right? But it's not just Miliband. They were going to do it as well, weren't they? The Conservatives. They did put it back to, I think, 2035, but now it's back to 2030. There can't be any petrol cars after 2030 manufactured. It's nonsense. People are going to lose jobs. Meanwhile, China is saying, oh, thank you very much. We're in the yen. What's the Chinese currency? I was going to say yen, but that's Japan, isn't it? Anyway, but they think they're quids in because they're going to manufacture all the cars, probably with slave labour. But there again, that's okay because the emissions will be done. It's nonsense. Anyway, so going back to community, this show proved to me how radio can unite a community. A car factory, it was the same with the coal mines, unites a community. People have a common goal. They have a common, it's like football. Why is football so important? I've been so angry this past few weeks about Coventry City. We've got a chairman who I think has done the wrong thing. He's got rid of Mark Robbins against the fans' wishes. And he's come up with some cock and bull story, and people are now believing him. And now we're going to get Frank Lampard to be manager. I don't want Frank Lampard. He's a great footballer. I knew his dad been out with. In fact, I've been out drinking with both of them. But they're not right for Coventry. Mark Robbins was. It's about community. And that's what I'm trying to say in this podcast or videocast today. Community is so important. The ties that bind us. Do you understand what I mean? So anyway, going back to the broadcast, we're there. We're going to do the show. And because everybody had been listening to me for so long, for 4 or 5 years, they kind of trusted me. So they phoned in because they were losing their jobs or they were worried about their wives or their mothers or their girlfriends or whatever. And they just started talking. And then we had people calling from the track, not just the track. I don't know if you worked in the car factory, but I have for a short time. It was murder. But on the top level, they have the bodies, and the bodies come round and then they drop them through onto the chassis. I wish I could say that word. And then it goes down the line and all the rest of it. So people are calling. And there was one bloke phones in. I could hear bang, crash, wallop, right? I said, what's going on? He said, we're pushing the fucking car. We had to bleep him. We're pushing the effing cars off the track. He didn't mean the cars. He meant the bodies. And you could actually hear them drop, bang, bang, bang. I thought there's going to be a riot any minute now, right? Meanwhile, I've got another young lad, Toby, who went on to become, he's one of the top guys at Three Counties Radio now in Luton, but he was just a student, just out of Luton University. or Polly, as I used to call it. Right? We had a load of kids from there. And when people talk about Mickey Mouse degrees, and they're often go, oh, yeah, media studies at Luton, right? Let me tell you, everybody who came through Luton and worked for me, they were brilliant. It's a brilliant course. And they go on to get work. And nowadays, I guess they get work in the internet and the rest of it. So don't just suddenly go, everybody who does media studies is a wanker, right? And they're wasting their money. And these kids I work with, they were all brilliant. Anyway, so Toby had a thing called a Marty. I don't really know what it is. It's like a rucksack, right? Got to be careful wearing a rucksack in Luton. But anyway, he's got a rucksack on with all the transmission gear in the back of it. And he gets amongst the crowd because they're outside now. They're outside. They had a big atrium. I tell you how big this glass room was. It was big enough to have like Fronteras and other Vauxhalls. Every car, every Vauxhall you've ever fantasized about in this atrium. He's outside. And they're all outside, the workers, and they're shouting abuse at the chairman and demanding he comes down. And Toby's describing the scene. And then suddenly the sound changes. And when I say it changes, it's because the actual audio changed. Because he went from being outside, he got pushed inside into the atrium. And because it was so tall, the whole sound quality was different. And I was just thinking, don't say anything, Toby. Just paint the pictures by the people screaming and shouting. And he was brilliant. No one could talk to him. We didn't have talk back with him. He just let it happen. And it unfolded on air. And they're shouting, Riley, Riley. He's the chairman at the time. Now, I'd been to his garden party a few months ago, so I knew him quite well. So I say to Lorraine, I've got talk back with Lorraine. I say, Lorraine, get Riley on. Tell him he's going to be lynched unless he speaks to these people very, very soon. Next thing I know, in my ear, he's there. Mr. Riley, good morning. As you can hear, probably outside your office, the workers are very upset that you're closing down. Oh, well, it was a decision made in the way. He comes out with all. He did his best, to be fair. Meanwhile, then Lorraine says, line 4. And she had Bill, what's his name? Black geezer. He used to be the head of the trade union, transport. Bill Morris, what a nice bloke, because he only lived down the road. So they got him on as a guest. Then we had the Bishop of Bedford on. We had loads of people. And it was all building this big story about how this was going to kill Luton, right? Then we even had the football. We had everybody, right? Anyway, so he goes, all right, I will talk to them. And then, so Toby says, on the first time he'd really spoken, he said, lads and lasses, Mr. Riley's going to address you in 10 minutes. But it quietened it down. And then he did speak to them, which, of course, we had a microphone on him. And it just went from there. And it was just one of those moments when you're doing live radio, when nobody dropped the ball. There were no technical problems, no nothing. Everybody was brilliant. All our reporters in different areas, every time we went to somebody on the phone, they were there, etc., etc. All coordinated by Lorraine, who was busy vomiting into the waste bucket, and the rat boy, Lee Agnew, the lead producer, with me in the van. So we did this whole show, went on for 3 hours. It was BBC local radio at its best, or any radio at its best. It was reflecting the needs and desires and frustrations of the local community and talking about something that was really precious to them, real stories. That's what real radio can do. That's what it should be. Unfortunately, local radio right across the country, they've dumbed it down, they've merged it all together again, and it's sub-radio tuned tosh most of the time. There's still nuggets that are beautiful and fantastic, especially the sport coverage, is what I would say. However, so we did the show. The show ended, right? And I've got to say this. I don't think I've ever admitted this in public before. As the show ended and the jingle came in and Stephen Rhodes, I think, or somebody else was on after me, he had a face like a slapped arse, evidently, because he thought he was the star of the station. But anyway, shouldn't talk ill of the dead. Good luck to him. Anyway, as the jingle came in, I let out the biggest rasping fart. There's no other word to describe it because we'd had the ball tea the night before. Lee turned around to me and said, "Oh, you dirty." And I said, "Lee, shut up. We've just won a Sony." That's what I said. I didn't know, right? We actually won 3 Sonys for that broadcast. I was only joking. We hadn't even put it in for Sony because you'd do that afterwards. But what I'm trying to say, you could just feel it in every fibre of your body that this was audio dynamite. And thankfully, and I'll tell you about the Sonys on another time, because the year before we'd been put up for one and I didn't win. But I did punch somebody on the dance floor of the Grosvenor House or whatever and fell into the pregnant arms of Ulrika Johnson. So the daily fascist newspaper, well, weekly fascist newspaper in Milton Keynes reported it. I'll tell you the truth about that in another podcast. So I didn't think we'd ever get an award. Anyway, we went to the Sonys and I did. I got 3. One of them given to me by George Martin, the producer, the 5th Beatle, so to speak. For a kid from Coventry, from the raggy arse end of Radford in Coventry, just talking about to people who were like me, it was tremendous. It was one of the best things, well, it was in my career. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. As a result of that, of course, I then got moved to London to try and save that radio station, which I did quite well with. But, you know, so I moved to London, blah, 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 got the job. And what happened then? Did I get the sack? No, I never got the sack from BBC London. I was there for 5 years, did 7/7, 9/11 and all that. And then I think, oh, yeah, that's right. I then got the job on The Sun and the BBC didn't like it. I'll tell you about that on another day. But it was Luton and the closure of Vauxhall that made me, I think it made me as a human being as well, because it made me realise what I was doing and my talent, if that's what it is, which is talking, had a real purpose in life. So I love Luton. I still look for their results. And when Luton played Coventry in the playoff, I didn't have split loyalties because I wanted to win. I wanted Coventry to win. As you know, we lost. And the truth is, Luton were the better team on the day. They'd been the better team all season. And I couldn't really deny that. It would have felt like we're robbing them. And as you know, they came back down after a season. And I was sorry for them for that. But I still look for their results. In fact, I've been looking for their manager because the rumour is they're going to sack him, which is daft, because they got relegated. I wouldn't mind him at Coventry. So I'm still linked, and still some of the people I work with in Luton are still there. But the lessons that I learned at Luton I've taken forward. But also this whole idea of community. When corporate giants somewhere in America suddenly decide, no, we don't want Luton. They've never been here. They just say, I don't want that anymore. And these people are thrown on the scrap heaps. So today I went mad at Terry Christian, you know, the big gobby northerner. I employed him when I was at Suntour. I think he's a talented guy. But he gobbed off today saying they asked for it. They asked for it because they wanted Brexit, which is absolute bullshit. This decision to close has got nothing to do with Brexit, but everything to do with the rush to go to EV cars. Nobody wants to buy an electric car at the moment. They're too bloody expensive. You're worried about the resale value, and you're worried about whether they'll get you to where you want to get to because there aren't enough charging points. They're not going to work. But that Ed Miliband, just like the Conservatives before him, Cameron started all this, of course. They're just pushing on it like mad. And we, ordinary mugs, are going to have to carry the can either by losing our jobs, which is what's happening in Luton, or by not being able to afford a car. It's the same with the ULIS charge and that idiot Sadiq Khan. And this idea that if you've got an old car, you're going to be penalised. Well, that's penalising the working class. They have old bangers. I've got an old banger at the moment. That's all you can only have what you can afford. I've learned that in the last few years. So what I'm trying to get at here is saying, when you make these decisions, when politicians make these decisions, like the idea, oh yeah, by 2030, the only new cars you'll be able to buy are electric, you've got to take the people with you. And that's the problem we've got with Starmer. I think we had it with Rishi. This isn't bashing Labour. I think he just thinks, oh, I'll ignore it. There was that petition. I've just had the biggest reaction on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, I've ever had. I made a post about the petition, right? And there were 750,000 people who looked at it and agreed with me. But, of course, there'd be the same people who would get slagged off by people like Terry what's his name? I've forgotten his name now. He used to interview people who had just drank vomit. He should go back and do that. He was very good at that. Terry Christian, professional northerner, right? So he made this statement this morning saying, you brought it on yourself. You voted for Brexit in Luton. You deserve it. And I just, that is so effing callous, is what I said. These people are losing their jobs. Have some humanity. But no, he doubled down on it because then he realised if I've reacted, and I was getting a huge reaction again today, and so was he knew that would maybe get him on telly. And he could, have I told you about how telly works? They have you because you're going to say something stupid. That's why that Norinda Kaur's always on. So she'll say something that upsets white people, and then there you go. She'll get 250 nicker. Jeremy, what's his name? Jeremy Vine, he'll love it. But it's not real. They don't even, most times, believe what they're saying. I don't know about Terry Christian. He probably does believe it because he's as thick as a brick, isn't he? But this is nothing to do with Brexit. It's to do with this massive march too fast to electric. Then I had people saying, oh, but you've gone on about that woke advert. You're slagging off Coventry. I said, no, I'm not. I was saying if Jaguar rebranding the way they are, it will kill the brand. It was a warning. What am I meant to dumbly, just because I'm from Coventry, say, oh, yeah, that's great. Whatever you want, Jag, on you go. I haven't got an opinion. No. It's like being a football fan. Oh, no, I'm not going to criticise the chairman who knows all about football, who's just got rid of our best manager. No, I'm going to have my say. And it's the same with the cars. So what I'm trying to get at here is this is the establishment. Yeah? The establishment. The experts who say we've got to go carbon neutral by 2030. This is why Ed Miliband, who can't even eat a bacon bloody sandwich, is in charge. He's just spaffed £28 billion of your money on carbon capture. Well, there's that Dale guy, who's the big green guy, who's always on GB News. He says, Dale Vince, I think his name is, he says it won't work. It's unproven technology. But Keir Starmer, oh yeah, we'll have that. And Keir Starmer, because of that petition, that's what I was telling you earlier, this massive reaction to my tweet. Starmer doesn't give a shit about a petition. 2.5 million people are telling him he's wrong. He's just trying to brush it away. I've got a majority. We've just had an election. And people are supporting him and agreeing with that. I don't want another election. I just want politicians and political leaders to believe in their manifesto, agree their manifesto, and then stick by it. Otherwise, we're being lied to and cheated, aren't we? And that's why all these things today, that's why I've taken so long to do this today. All these thoughts are clashing in my head. And it does go back to Luton. And it does go back to local radio. And it does go back to community. Look what happened when Maggie Thatcher closed down all the pits, even though there's all that coal under there. I'm not blaming her. There's her and Scargill. Both were playing my Willie's bigger than your Willie. Yeah, in fact, hers was probably bigger. But who suffered? The communities, now blighted with terrible drug problems. Same things happen with fishing. We've got to keep our industry. People need jobs. People need jobs. All these new bloody houses they're building, or meant to be building, how are people going to be able to afford them? They're not. And then meanwhile, Starmer comes in. He nicks the winter fuel allowance off loads of people. He's changed the NI. I mean, I was laughing my duck this weekend. This whole thing about we're going to get people back to work. Young people are going to get the go. We're going to get them. If they don't take a job, they're going to take their benefits off. Who do you think you are? Keith Joseph? Norman Tebbit? You couldn't crush a grape. You couldn't tear a tissue. I saw the dopey mayor who was in charge of that on the telly. She looked frightened just being interviewed. Andy Peters rolled Keir Starmer over an interview the other day when she said, look, you're not popular. 2.5 million people hate your guts, at least. But they're just going to push through it. Oh, I'm Keir Starmer. I wear other men's suits. I let other men buy my wife dresses. What are you going to do about it? And I release prisoners. Today, they've released the guy who evidently indoctrinated the Manchester bomber, a BB. He's been released, even though the parole board said he's still dangerous. What is happening? Meanwhile, you don't get an electric car, you're going to be a pariah. They're going to tax you off the roads. They've already more or less done that, haven't they? With Eulers and congestion charging. Even to get into Birmingham now, it's £8 or something ridiculous. It's mad. And they're going to carry on doing that. And they're going to say, you've got to get a job. You don't get a job, you're not going to get any more benefits. Well, they won't do that. That's absolute bull. No government's ever done that. Oh, we're going to do that. We're going to crack down on the governments. We're going to change what job centres look. I heard the dopey woman I'm talking about, I can't remember her name. She said, oh, yeah, job centres. Yeah, they need to do this and do that. I thought, when was the last time you were in one? And it was evidently 20 years ago. Because when I was just on the dole recently, we don't call it the dole, what do you call it? You know, the job seekers allowance. I went in there to be interviewed by my one. They don't interview, they're just ticking boxes. I said, where's the jobs then? Are they up on a board somewhere? She said, no, we don't do that anymore. It's all online. You have a look there and we'll have a look and we'll have a think. I mean, she was doing a job, sort of, but there's no real intent to get people back to work. Because if there was, you wouldn't have a government that's just put up national insurance for employers. So now the employers can't afford to employ people. They can put a penny off beer, but the beer's going to go up by 10 or 20p a pint to pay for this extra staff. Don't get me wrong. I think the minimum wage should be higher, but there's no joined up thinking. Same with the electric cars. There's no joined up thinking. I'm old enough to remember when they told us, get a diesel. I even got a Jag diesel. It was a great car, actually. But get a diesel. That's the future, not petrol. Now you're like a leper if you've got a diesel. It's better to have a petrol. Why don't they make their minds up? Why don't they lead? Well, it's because most of them are morons. Most people who become MPs are the kind of kids who you beat up at school, aren't they? They are. They are. They'll be the last ones to be picked to be in the rugby team. Oh, hang on. We'll Gaunty, we'll have you, Smithy. We'll have Smithy's dog. But he's just here to watch. No, we'll have him. What? You don't want Keir Starmer? You don't want Keir Starmer? He can go and play in the netball team. I'm on a flight to fancy. You follow where I'm coming from. I think I've gone a bit stir crazy. I'm still down at my daughter-in-law, so you can see I've been on my own for a day or two because she's been away on a work trip. So I've been here and I've just been thinking these thoughts and I've just got so angry. But I got angry, but you know what I've also got? Tremendous sense of pride for what we did in Luton. Not me, but the team, the group of people. We tried to do something and the community going for it was the BBC at its best. I'm not suggesting I'm the next David Attenborough, but I think what we did was good and it was positive. And today I've had quite a lot of people saying, oh, Gaunt reminds me when you were on air in Luton. Ordinary people I've not heard for ages. I've also having loads of people now getting in touch about my YouTube channel. Oh, we'll come across you by accident, Gaunty. I don't care how you come, just come. But come to me and come and find me. And if you found me, will you tell other people about it? Please do that. And don't forget, I do need support. www. It's on the bottom of the screen. buymeacoffee.com/John Gaunt. Well, that only works if you're watching it on YouTube already, I guess. But I'm still going to do the audio podcast. They're going a bomb. But the video podcast on YouTube, they're going absolutely bananas. I'm getting the subscriptions right up. You've got to get the viewing hours up. You've got to get 4,000 viewing hours. So even if you're listening to the audio, can you also go to YouTube, subscribe, and start listening and watching there as well? I'm well on the way to getting me 4,000 hours. You have to have 1,000 subscribers. I got that almost overnight. That was easy. But it's now getting people to watch. Anyway, I'm digressing. But so what I'm trying to say is I was proud. I'm proud of what we did in Luton 20 odd years ago. I'm proud of a lot of what I've done on radio, where I've basically allowed, or no, I've not allowed. I've needed people just to speak their mind. There's not enough of that today, is there? There's just not enough of that in the world. And we're being ruled by idiots. I'm sorry, Miliband, idiot, Starmer, Pratt, right? Managerial. He wouldn't have been. Has he got to be the Prime Minister? He's got no charisma. He's got no leadership. But he's in charge. He got voted in because no one wanted Rishi or the Conservatives. It's a mad, mad world. But this electric, and believe me, I've been in nice electric cars. Ages ago when I was working in London, I used to get in those Pyrrhus, and they're great for around town. No problem whatsoever. Been in that guy's Audi that I told you about. What a car. Fantastic. Would I buy one myself if I had the money? No. Why? Because I don't want to be sitting in a very expensive car wondering if it's going to run out of lecky. Sorry, did enough of that when I was a student, worried about whether the lecky will run out. I ain't going to do it in a car until the infrastructure's there. And the infrastructure's not there. But meanwhile, Ed Miliband is hell-bent on going down that route. Vauxhall. It's not Vauxhall, is it? It's their parent company, Stellantis. Sounds like a STD, doesn't it? But they're the ones who are saying we don't want to make these cars because people aren't buying them. And I see today Ford are saying, look, we need incentives from the government to encourage people. Well, of course you do. Look, we're always giving bribes, money, foreign aid, aren't we? How about giving some back to the British people who actually supply the dosh? How about that, Keir Starmer? Suddenly whack massive amounts of discount if you go electric. Yeah, you can even use Gary Newman's song, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do. But this is unsustainable. I want to be sustainable, but you're making it unsustainable. And I think I speak for a lot of people who think like that as well. And as for Terry Christian, listen, I'm glad he can still have his say. I want him to have his say. Some of the other people, some things they said about me were terrible. But it's got nothing to do with Brexit, everything to do with electric vehicles, and we, the public, don't want them. And if the public don't want them, let me tell you, this is an absolute fact. You can give everything away, you can give every incentive in the world, but if you can't convince the public that electric is the way forward, it won't happen. It won't happen. And that's where Starmer's going wrong. Like Starmer, he could have said about the petition, 2.5 million, 3 million, whatever it's at the moment. By the way, sign it still to keep the pressure on him. He could have said, I'm going to bear in mind what people are saying. Because he has broken promises. He has outwardly lied. Just my views. Right, that's enough. I am stir crazy. I do apologise if that was a little bit too much of a rant. Please, if you can support me, it's www.buymeacoffee.com/John Gaunt. Look on my Twitter, look on my Facebook. I mean, 750,000 people following this fat little git, yeah, or agreeing with him or disagreeing, getting involved. Impressions. It's what it's all about. I never knew this. All those years I was on the radio, I didn't realise how important social media was. So I'm as happy as a pig in muck, but I just got no cash. Anyway, that's enough. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope I've given you food for thought. Can I say hello to all the Australian and the New Zealand watchers and listeners? I can't, and the ones in America. YouTube is revolutionising what I think about broadcasting. But I still go back to that one thing. The core of broadcasting is communication and community. Listening, asking the right questions of the public, and then the community having their say. It's the best thing in the world. That's why I can't wait to get going on the live shows, and that's what we're going to do soon on YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to my channel, John Gaunt TV. Right, that's me done. All right, we'll have another chat tomorrow, hopefully. Until then. Oh, that was nice. I got an email about this. Somebody said, I love when you used to say, if you got kids, etc. Well, I still say it now. My kids are 31 and 27, 28. But if you have got kids, give them a kiss, give them a hug. Keep telling them you love them. Thanks for listening to me and watching. Speak to you soon. Bye.